All of you, hope you guys are great. So this is the very first video. In this we're going to start working on the smart contract. Once we're done with the smart contract deployment testing, after that we're going to work on the UI part. We're going to connect the smart contract with the UI. So what I have done so far, I have created this folder by the name real estate contract. Okay, so let me open this particular folder in my VS Code, and here I am. Let me make it full screen. That's how it's going to look like. And now the very first thing I have to do is I have to initialize the project. Okay, so to do that, all I have to do is simply type npx ThirdWeb lattice create contract, and we are using ThirdWeb in this project for building our entire tab. Okay, as I told you in the last video, that's what we're going to utilize it. So let me hit enter. This will take a little bit time, so it's going to ask you to give a name of your project. So let me call it, let's say call it ThirdWeb 3, and we're going to start with empty hard hat project. So hit enter, and we're going to take this empty hard hat. And the best part of this ThirdWeb is that it will give you pre-built contract. So if you want to create your ERC20 token, if you want to create your ERC721, ERC1150, so you can use the pre-built contract in your project and deploy that. But we're going to start with the empty contract. So hit enter, and this will take a little bit time, so just be with me. Let's get completed. So let me do a little bit fast forward so it can happen very quickly. Why? And finally you can see that we have successfully initialized ThirdWeb in our project, and here it will give you a couple of commands. So it will have this web npm run build. If you want to deploy the contract, we can run this command. If we want to publish, we can do that. So it's pretty easy and it has all the features. So that's absolutely incredible. Now simply clear the terminal, and now let me show you what we have inside this web3 folder. So let me open this one, and inside that you will find all this folder and file which ThirdWeb create. It's just like a normal React or Next application. Okay, so you will find this Git. Inside this you will have all the data about the GitHub repository or Git. So I hope you guys are familiar with this. Now come here, open this contract one, and inside this you will have this empty contract. Let me drag this down, open this one. As we have selected empty contract, so that's why we don't have anything on it. Okay, so this is our empty contract. Let me rename this to real estate, and that's the same thing I'm going to call to my contract, say real estate. Okay, so we got our name, things looks pretty fine. Now what we can do, here we have the get ignore, so we don't want to push couple of things to our GitHub. So that's all you will find here by default when you will initialize ThirdWeb. And here we have this hard config file, and here we have to do couple of important configuration because we're going to deploy this to the Polygon text network. So once we complete the smart contract, we'll definitely come back and we're going to do the configuration here. So that looks pretty good, and this is the package.json file. If you open this one, this is the entire package data you will find here. So we'll have this script. So if we want to run the build command, we can call it build. We have this deploy, and we have release, and we have hard hat, and we have ThirdWeb contract. So that's the basic one. Now what we can do is, let me close all these open tabs, and we can start working on the contract very first. Okay, let's first build the contract. Once we build the contract, after that we're going to test the contract. Once we test the contract, after that we're going to deploy the contract. So this is the step I'm going to take. First build, test, deploy, connect. 4 steps we're going to have. So make it side by side. And now we're not going to take this constructor because we don't need to pass any argument into our dApp. So close this one. Now let me write down all the function we're going to create into our contract. So let me write down. So let me call this function, and let's create the very first function. We'll call it list property. So this function will allow user to list their property, and it's going to take a couple of inputs. Okay, so for the time being, just give the name to our functions and it will return a unt. So we'll say, let's say unt. Okay, let's build the function. So this is the very first function we have. Now let's come here, let's create the second function, and this will allow them to update the data. So let's say update property, and right now we don't pass any argument. Let's make it external return, and we want to return the, let's say unt. Okay, once the data is updated in the contract, we have to return a unt. Actually we're going to return an product id. So these are the two functions we have. Let's create the another one. Let's bring this down. Function will say by property, and it's going to take a couple of inputs, so we have to make it external so anyone can call it, and we have to make it public as well because there is a transfer of funds. So we'll say external payable, and it's not going to return anything. And let's create the fourth one, and this will call get properties. So it will give us all the properties, get all properties, public view, and we're going to return the entire struct. Okay, we're going to return the entire property. So what we'll do, we'll return, and we're going to create a struct, and I'm going to call it property. So let's call it in advance. Right now we are just calling the functions, so property and memory. Okay, and we have to create this struct, so we are just building the skeleton, the function we're going to utilize it. Now let's create the next function, and this will call get property, and this one is for the individual property. So we'll say external view, and we want to return the property. Okay, let's come here. Now we have to create the other function, so we have to create the function for get user property, and it's not going, we're going to push the property external view, and we have to simply return the entire property. So property, and we'll say memory. Okay, that looks fine. Now come down here, and this one is going to be for the reviews. So we are done with the all properties like listing, buying, updating, getting all properties like get properties and get user properties, all the function for the properties. Now we have to create the functions for the reviews. Okay, so we will allow our user to add review, add like system to each one of the properties, so we have to build a separate function for that. So let's come here, review function, and we'll say function, and this will say add review, and it's going to take the product ID, but leave it like it for timing external. And we'll create another function, this will call get prop, let's say get product review. Okay, reviews, and external view, and return, and it's going to return the entire review. Okay, memory. And you have noticed one thing, that I have used get product review. So in the last video I told you that in the last video I explained about the reusable smart contract model. In that I've explained you that how you can create a global review system. The same review system I'm using in this particular project. Okay, the same review system. If you haven't watched, make sure to watch it, or you can follow this project. It will make more sense. That's why I've given this name, get property review. That's why I've given this name, get product review. You can call it property, it's totally up to you, but I want to keep things different for the review and for the properties. So we have this one, get property review. Let's bring this down. Now let's create the other function, and this will say get user review. So this one is going to be for the individual user who will give the review. And let's say external view, return, and we want to return the entire review memory. Okay, let's come down. So we are done with the add review, get product review, get user review, and now we have to add the, let's say, like review, so anybody can like the review. So okay, so external, let's come down, and now we have to write the function for get highest rated product. So this function is very special because this function will allow us to monitor that which particular review has a higher amount of likes, higher amount of engagement, so we can fetch that particular product and display in our front end in the UI. Okay, you can do either in two ways. You can do in the normal way by calling this function, or you can store information. You can create a separate variable in the contract which can keep the track of highest number of like, highest number of engagement, but I would like to make things simple. That's why I've taken this function, external view, and it's going to return the, let's say, UNT, the ID of the product. Okay, so we are done with the entire functionality, entire function we're going to include into our contract. So everything's looking so far good. So we have this listed, update property, buy property, we have all properties, get user properties, add review, get products reviews, get user review, like review, get highest rated product. So hope so far things making sense to all of you guys. Now we're going to define the entire state variable in our contract. So we have done with the functionality. Now let's talk about the variables. So let me give this comment, state variable, and now the very first thing we have to define is the struct for the property. Okay, so let's say struct property, and this will have a couple of data types. So we'll have boolean, we'll have number, and we'll have a lot of data types. So let's write it down one by one. So you can see here we have the property. Now come here. Now the first thing we have to take the UNT, because we have to keep the track of the product ID. So every single property the user will list in our marketplace, every single property will have a unique ID. So that's what we have to assign in the struct. So we'll say product ID, then we'll have the address of the particular user, then we'll have the UNT. This will keep the track of the price. Why is there? Okay, I have to remove this. So UNT 256. Okay, so we got the product ID, we got the honor, we got the price. Now let's come down here. We have to take the string, and this will keep the information about the property title. Okay, title, let's call it title. Now we'll take the string, we'll take this one, will be category, because every single property, like, you will allow user to have multiple category in our marketplace. So they can have a like housing, rental, official, or a marketplace. So those kind of category will assign. You can do this based on the enum, but I would like to keep it like it. Okay, so let's take the string image. So for the image, what I have planned, that we can include two options. Like, user can paste the URL of the image. So if they have an image, and if they have uploaded any image to anywhere else, they can simply take the URL and they can paste, and we can store into the contract. Or we have one more option, we can include that the user can upload the image to the IPFS, but I just try to keep that IPFS thing as an optional. Okay, because many of you are struggle to get the Infura key and private key, because right now you can't use their global endpoints, it's required credit card. Okay, so that's why I try to keep it things simple. I'll try to keep it as a URL base, but we can modify later. Okay, just for the time being, let's keep it like it. Okay, so we have the image. Let's take another one. This will be the property address, and we'll take the description as well. Okay, description. Now we have to take the address, address, and we're going to keep the address of like those who will like the give the review. Okay, give the review. So let's say reviewers, and now we have to keep the message. So the review they are giving in the product, in the sorry I'm saying product, it's a property. So we'll say review. So this is the entire data we are storing. Hope so far things are clear. So when a user will list a single property, we're going to take all of this data. Product ID will be automatically get calculated based on the contract. So we'll take the address of the user, price, title, category, image, property, address, descriptions, and later they can define the review, and we can store the data into this. So that's the property struct we have. Now come here. Now we have to define the mapping, because we have to map one property to with a unique ID. Okay, so we'll say mapping, we'll say mapping UNT, and we'll refer to the entire property. So we'll take this property. It will be a private variable, because we don't want to allow others to call it. Okay, so private, and we'll say properties. That looks fine. Now what we have to do is we have to take a variable which will use it to create a property ID. Okay, which will keep the track of how many properties user have listed into the marketplace. Okay, so we'll take this UNT. It will be a public variable, and we'll say property index. Okay, property index, property ID is totally up to you, but index suits better. So that looks good. Now what we can do, come here, we'll take this events. So events are important, very important, because I want to show you the concept of event and how powerful it is. Because when we're going to fetch the data from the smart contract, I'll show you the both way, the function we have created for the fetching the data, and we're going to fetch the data based on the event as well. And it's very cheap. It will save your life when you will work on a real world project, and that will save your life. So that's the event we have. Now let's come here, we'll call it event. The very first event we have to create is property, let's say listed. Okay, and in that we have to store 3 to 4 information. So the first information will store the product ID, so we have to provide the index, we'll say ID. Then we'll take the address of the owner, so we'll say indexed owner, and we have to store the price. Hope things are making sense to all of you guys. This is the first event we have. Now let's create the other event, and this event will call property sold. So whenever someone will buy the property, we have to trigger this event, and that we're going to pass this the index, the ID of the product. Then we have to pass the old owner index, old owner. Then we have to pass the address of the new owner, and we have to pass the then we have to take another one, and we have to pass the pricing of the particular product which he has bought. Okay, pricing. So that's the two events we have. Now let's create the third one. So we'll say event, and this will call property property resold. Okay, hope you guys have understood what we have done. So when someone will sell it, we're going to initialize this particular event, and that we have to pass the product ID. So we'll say unt index ID. We have to take the address, index the old owner, and we have to say address, index the new owner, and the last one is going to be the pricing of the property. So this is the three events we have. Hope things are making sense to all of you guys what we have done here. And I'm going pretty slow. If you think that I'm going a little faster, try to adjust the speed. There is a setting in the YouTube section, that's a setting here you have. Click on that, and from there you can adjust the high and low speed of the video. So we are done with this event, done with the property, done with the mapping, done with the events, and looks pretty fine. Now what we can do it, now we're going to start working on the review model. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Let me have a look one more time. So this one is looking pretty good, and now we can start work on the review. So let me type review. Okay, why it's taking this blue? Okay, let's type the okay, no, let's take this section. Okay, still it's blue. Let me attach this one. Now it's good. So look good so far. Now we're going to take the struct, because we're going to keep the reviews in a struct. So that review will have the how many rating that particular property have got from individual users. Then we'll keep the review, then we'll keep the address, a lot of data we're going to keep. So let's define that one. So we'll take struct, we'll say review, and the very first thing we want to is store the address of the person who's giving the review. So let me remove this one, address, and we'll say reviewer. Then we have to store the unt, we have to store that what is the product ID, because on the base of that they will give the review. Okay, product ID. Then we have to take a variable for the rating, and after the rating we have to take a string for the comment, so they will give the comment. So, and now finally we have to take the likes, because we'll allow them to like a particular review. Okay, that's functionality is also going to be there, and that's going to be controlled by the smart contract. You have two options. You can do this outside the contract, like using the front end and the UI part JavaScript, but I like to include all the things into the contract so no one can manipulate, because it's immutable. Once you deploy this contract on the blockchains, nobody can make the changes, and that's kind of feature we want in our application. We don't want to do any manipulations from the front end side. Okay, so that's the entire struct what I'm having here. Okay, let me provide this semicolon. That looks pretty good. So this is the review. Now we have to take one more struct, and this struct will keep the track of the product. Okay, so let me take the struct, and we'll say product, and let's say product, and it will take the unt, the product ID, obviously, because that's the unique identifier each property will have. Now we'll take the unt, we'll have the total rating, so how many rating that particular user have got, and now we have to take the last one, which is a number of rating or number of review, we can call it. Okay, this will keep the track that how many reviews that particular product has got it. Okay, so that's the two struct we have taken, one for the review, one for the product. In the product section we are keeping the track of the product ID and that how many totals rating that particular product has got. On base of this we're going to calculate that which one is the highest rated product in our marketplace. Okay, so it becomes very easy for you for us to build and show the data into the front end. And we have this another unt which will keep the track of number of review a particular product has got. So that looks pretty fine. So that's the entire struct we have, and now we have to define the mapping. So come here, we'll say mapping unt, and we want to return the entire review. Okay, so every product, every review will have a unique ID, and when we pass that unique ID into that mapping, it will give the entire review. Okay, so we'll take this review array, and that looks good. Come here, we'll say private, and we'll call reviews. Let's take another one. This will keep the track of the address. So we'll say UNT 256, and we'll say private will be the user review, sorry. So that looks good. We'll display, and the reason we have included this particular mapping, because like user will have their own dashboards where they can see that what they have done in the past. So if they have give comments, if they have give review, if they have provide likes, so those are information we want to fetch, so we can display in the profile dashboard. Okay, so for that we are keeping the track of this particular review system. That's the one mapping. And let's create another one, and this will take a UNT, and it's going to return the product. It will be a private, and we'll say products. Okay, so far hope everything is making sense to all of you guys that what we are doing here. So we have this 3 mapping, so that looks good. And now we have to take a variable which keep the track of the counting. So let me take that public review, so counter. That looks good. Now we have to initialize the event, so let's take the event. So this will call review added, added, and in that we have to pass the couple of data. We have to pass the product ID, so we have to pass the product ID, we have to pass the address, the one who's created the review, so we'll call it reviewer, and we have to pass the, let's say, rating, that how many rating he or she has given, and we have to pass the address, the message he has provided. So let me type this comment. Okay, this is the first event we have. Now let's write the another one. This one is for the review, like, so like if someone given the review to the particular product, someone else can like his review, like the functionality we have in YouTube or any other social media platform. So if someone give comment, you can go and you can like their comment, or you can like their review. So that's kind of things we're going to add it. So this is the event we have. Let's pass the same data. We're going to pass this UNT, the product ID. So we'll say product ID, then we have to keep the UNT index, we'll keep the review index. Okay, and then we have to take the address of the one who has provided the review. Okay, so we'll call it liker, and we'll keep this UNT 256 likes. Okay, so hope things are making sense to all of you guys what we have done. So in the second one, we have taken the product ID, we have taken the review, because every single review will have a unique index. Okay, because we are storing the entire review in the product ID as a form of array. So it will go from 0, 1, 2, 3. So that 0, that 1 is a unique identity to a particular review. Okay, because when we get all review, it will give us the entire review of the smart contract, but we have to relate that review from the particular product. So that's why we have taken this index. Okay, and like are those who will like the review and those who will give the likes. Okay, so those are the things. So this is the entire events we have, looking so fun, good to me, and looking so good. So this is the state one, this is the mapping, this is the events for the product property, this is the review section, this is the product section, this is the mapping section, this is our review counter we have, and this is the event we have. So far things are looking good in my end and pretty good. Now we're going to start working on our very first function for listing property. Okay, so hope you guys are excited. If you are, do let me know in the comment section that I'm excited and I have understood whatever I have told you. If you still have any confusion, write me right now, stop me here and ask me that what is your problem, what is the confusing part in the contract, what you haven't understood. Ask me in the comment section so I can tell you. Okay, after that you should go ahead once you understand everything. So this is the function we're going to start working on very soon. Now let's start working on it. So the very first thing we have to do is we have to receive couple of data from the user, because when the user will list their property to the marketplace, we need title, we need pricing, we need images, we need description, we need addresses. So we need all of the information, and that's what we're going to ask from the user inside this function. So let's take that function. So we'll take this first thing, we're going to take this address of the person who is creating. And the reason why I'm not going with message.sender, because that's a one way to store the information of the user who is calling this function. But here we are using ThirdWeb, okay, and we are not using web3 model or any other packages for connecting with the wallet or making connection with the smart contract. We are using ThirdWeb. So like there is a function in ThirdWeb which I will tell you how when you will call that function, it will give you the address of the user, it will give you the signer, and that's what we're going to pass it. Okay, so that's why there is no need of taking this method.sender. That's why we're going to take this address straight away from the function. So like it address honor, we'll take this unt, and this will keep the price. We'll take the string memory, this will say property title, then we have to take a string memory, and this will say category. Then we'll take this string memory, and it will say image, and this will say string memory, and this will say the property address, and we have one more is the description. So these are the information we're going to take from the users into this function. I hope so far things are making sense to all of you guys. Now let's go. This looks pretty good to me. All the things we have here, image, property address, descriptions, that's good. Now come here, and we want to return the unt from this function. Once the property get listed, we have to return the id. You have two options. You can return the entire data to the user, but it's always better to go with the simple approach, product id. So open this one, and now we have to simply write down all the data, take this all data and write down into a smart contract. Okay, so we're going to take this check because we have to do a check, and the check we're going to do on the base of the price. We want the user should provide at least some amount of money. The price should be not zero, so that's the condition we're going to check. So we'll say price should be greater than 0, otherwise we have to throw this error message. So we'll say price must be greater than 0. That looks good. So this is the first check we have. Once we pass this check, we have to simply update that. Okay, my AC is not working, and you can see that I'm sweating. Not a big deal. Let's complete this out. So that's the first check. Once we pass this check, we have to get the product ID. We have to create that unique ID for the product, which we can assign, and that will become the unique identifier for the product. So we'll take this unt, and we'll take this unt variable, and we'll say, let's say product ID, and here we're going to increment. So remember, this is we have taken the product property index we have taken, and we're going to simply take this plus plus, so it will increment. So whenever the properties get listed, this will keep increment, and that's how we're going to generate a product ID. So that looks good. We have this one, and you can see this is the variable we have taken. Come here, and now we can see come here, and now we have to simply take the entire property, and we have to take the property, we have to get the properties, and that we have to pass the property ID, because this ID will become the unique identifier. And now we're going to simply pass here, and we're going to simply update that. So this is the same logic we have followed over and over again. So we'll pass property, and will take the property dot product ID, make it capital D. Okay, come here, and here what I have said, open this one and make it capital D. That looks good. Come here, now we have to simply update this product ID. That looks good. Now we have to take this product property, honor, and is equal to is going to be the honor, property dot price is going to be a price, property dot property title is going to be property title. We'll take this property category is going to be category, and we'll take this property dot image is going to be image, and we'll have one more is going to be a description. So we'll say property address, and after that we're going to have the last one is the property description. That looks good. And then we have to simply initialize the event. We have to pass the event. What is the name we have given is this property lister. Simply copy that one, come here and paste, and we have to pass all the information. So let's pass this one. We'll pass the product ID, we have to pass the honor, we have to pass the price, and that's the three information we are passing into this event. Okay, That looks pretty good, and that's the entire function for list property. Hope entire thing making sense to all of you guys. You guys have understood that what we have done into this function. Finally, I'm starting once again. I had to pray, so I have done my prayer. Now I'm continuing the property listing functionality in the contract. Now we have to work on the update property. Okay, so come here and let's take a variable, because we're going to take data from the user, and we're going to check that whether those who try to update the property, whether they are the owner or not. So we only allow owner to update the property. Obviously you want this behavior, so we'll say address owner. We'll take the all the data. Actually in this function will allow them to update all the data, not an individual one. You can do that, but I just try to keep things simple so they can update all the data at one go, not one by one. So we'll take the product ID. So we'll take the ID because we have to verify the product. We have to find that particular product among the products array. So let's get that one, and now we have to take the data from the user. So we'll take this string and we'll take the memory. We'll call it product title. That's the first data we'll take. We'll take the another one, string memory, and this will say category. So later if you want to change the category, he can do that. So we have to take the memory image, and we have to take the address. So we'll say memory property address, and the last one is going to be the description. So we'll say string memory and descriptions. So we have taken almost all the data, so only these data will allow them to update. And I forgot to add one function, because we're going to add one more function into this contract which allowed them to change the pricing. So I forgot to add that function, so let me complete this function. After that we're going to create that function. Okay, and at the end we're going to simply return the unt, so the product ID. So that looks pretty fine. Now let's open this one. First thing we have to do is we have to simply find that particular product which we have in the contract. So we'll have this property, we'll say storage, we'll say property, and we'll call the properties array, which will keep all the properties, and in that we're going to pass the ID. So it will give us that particular property which user wants to update on based on the ID. So we got the ID, we got the property, and now once we have the property, that particular property, now we have to simply check for a condition that the person who's trying to call the function, he is the owner or not. So that's the check we have to do. So we'll build a required statement, and that we're going to simply compare. We'll have the property, we'll check the owner of the property, and that's the property we're going to compare with the address which user will provide. Okay, so okay, owner, okay, not again. So let's type owner now this time. Sometimes this auto typing is not working. Okay, so we have to throw the error message, your error, you are not the owner. That looks fine. So once they pass this particular condition, we have to simply change all the data, we have to update all the data. So we'll say property, not repository, we have to say property. Simply copy that one and copy this one and paste here property, and we have to simply update the, let's say we have to update the property title. So it will be the property title. We'll take the property, and now we have to update the category. This is the category. We'll take the property, and this time we have to update the image with the image. Now we'll take the property, and this will become the property address to be the address which user is providing, and the last one is going to be the description, because that's what we have. So we'll say property descriptions, and that looks pretty fine. So once the entire data is getting updated, at the end we have to simply do one thing. We have to simply return the ID of the product. That's what we can update, or you can update a custom message that your property ID, your property successfully updated. But here I just return the ID. Okay, you can display a custom message as well. So okay, so this is the property ID we have. So we are done with this entire functionality for updating the property into the contract. Hope entire thing making sense to all of you guys. So this is the function which will take all of this data, owner, product ID, titles, category, image, address, and descriptions. Then we are making the change. We are finding that particular product, particular category, particular property. Then we are checking for the owner. Then we are simply updating, and at the end we are returning this particular ID, means the product is updated. That looks pretty good. So hope this entire thing makes sense to all of you guys. Now come here, close this one, and now we have to create one more functionality. So right now we have this buy property, But before we work on that, we have to create one more functionality which allow user to update their pricing. And I forgot to add, but let's add it right now. So we'll say function, we'll say update price, and it's going to take couple of data. It will take the owner, it will take the product ID, and it will take the pricing. These are the three data we're going to take from the user into this function. So will be the address, owner, and we'll take the, let's say, unt. This will be the product ID, and the last one is going to be the unt, which is a price. So these are the three data we're going to take, and it's tunnel, so anybody can call it. And here we're going to simply return the, let's say, return the string. It's totally up to you. You can return the product ID, but this time I'm going to return the custom string message, so you can see how you can do that. So will be string and memory. Hope you guys understand what I'm doing here. Okay, so this is the function and the inputs. Now we have to simply find the particular product. So we'll say per property and store, property store, and then we have to simply get the property, and we have the properties, and we have to get the property, that individual, and we have to pass the product ID. That looks good. So that's the product ID. Now we have to simply check for a condition that the person is calling the function whether he or she owner or not. Okay, so that's the condition we have to check. We'll say property dot owner is equal to owner, otherwise we have to throw this error message that you are not the owner. That looks good. Now come here, and then we have to simply update the pricing. Property dot pricing is equal to the new price, and at the end we're going to return the custom message that your price is updated, something like that. So we'll say return, we'll say your product property price is updated. You can display whatever you want, but I want to display the actual string message. So that looks fine. This is the update property, update pricing, and we are taking all of these inputs, then we are building the condition, and then we are simply making the change. So we are done with this three functionality: list property, update property, and update pricing. I believe that you can hear the noise. My niche is crying. That's a regular day stuff. So we are done with this entire 3.1. Now we're going to start working on the buy property. So this is the function we're going to start working on. So it's external and payable. So what we have to do is we have to receive couple of data. We need the owner, we need the product ID, and we need the pricing, so he can make the purchase. So we'll take this unt, we'll take the ID of the product, then we'll take the address of the buyer, you can call it owner. So we'll have the buyer, and these are the two data for we can keep it. Okay, and first thing we have to do is first we have to take the value. So you have two options to take the money. You can go with the message dot value, or you can take the pricing, but message dot value is the more convenient way, because when we'll take the value from the input, like if I take the price from the input, I have to simply convert that into a way that's a lot of work. Okay, we can simply take the message dot sender, it will automatically do the conversion in terms of way, and that is more convenient. So let's do that. We'll take a unity variable, we'll say amount, and we'll say message dot value, msg dot value. Okay, so we have the value, the amount which user will provide to buy the property. Once we have the value, now we have to make the condition. Okay, so we'll take this required statement, because we have to compare the property price and the price he is providing. So we have to compare. If the price is equal to that price, then we'll make the transaction happen, otherwise we want to fail it. So we'll say amount should be greater or equal to the property, and we have to pass the ID, so it will give me that particular property, and in that we can get that pricing. So hope you can understand that what we are doing here. With the ID, we are passing that into a property, so it will give us that particular property, and from there we are taking this particular variable pricing, and we are comparing that amount whether it's greater or equal to that property price, then we can make the transaction, otherwise we want to fail it. Here you can see that the price can be go up, or it can go at the same amount, but it cannot be down. Okay, so you can go with a fixed amount, it's totally up to you. And here we have to display the insufficient fund balance. The fund is not sufficient. So that's the check we have done, and now we have to simply make the transaction. But before we do that, we have to do it in this way. We'll say that we have to find the property. Okay, so we'll say property storage, we'll say property, and we'll take this property, and then we have to pass the ID. Okay, we have got the properties, that's property. Once we have the property, then we have to make the transaction, because this time the transfer of the fund is not going to be stored in the contract. So as soon as someone will buy the property, we have to transfer that fund to his wallet address. We're not going to keep his fund into the contract. You can do it, you can add a extra layer of additional charges. So whenever someone will buy or sell property, you will make commission, but we are not including that functionality. If you want, you can include that, the way we have implemented that functionality into the NFT marketplace, so you can watch that as well. But for the time being, I just want to go like a simple one. They can buy and sell without paying any commissions, or if you want, you can simply charge that as well. So here we'll take a boolean value. We'll say bool send. So this will return either true or false. So if the transaction is successful, it will return true, or if it's failed, then it will return false. So we'll say, we'll take the payable property owner. So as soon the new buyer will buy the property, we have to call this, and we have to transfer the fund to that particular user. Okay, so on this we're going to call this call method. So we have three methods to transfer fund: send, call, and transfer. Call is the most secure one and most recommended one you will find in most of the community or in the smart contract. So I would prefer you to go with the call one, but it's your choice. But call is more secure and more gas friendly consumption. Okay, so we'll have this call, and in that we have to pass the value. So we already have the value amount, and we're going to simply call this empty function. So this will transfer the fund to the property owner, and once this return true or false, once the transfer get take place or whether it's get fail. Okay, if it succeed, then we have to check for a condition. We'll say if send is true, then we have to simply change the state, change the ownership. So we'll say take the property dot owner is going to be the new owner, so the address, the buyer. Okay, and then we'll simply initialize the event, because this time sold event is taking place, so we'll apply that one. So this is the event we have, where it is, come here. So this is the event we have, sold, property sold, and that's one we're going to simply call it here. So simply come here. So that looks pretty fine. So we'll say property sold, and within that we have to pass the ID, property owner, we have to pass the buyer, the new buyer, and the amount. So this looks pretty good. So that's the entire function for buying. And you have to keep one thing in mind, that in this function we are not paying any commission to the marketplace. You can take that commission, but for simplicity purpose, I'm going like this approach. You can allow them to list your property and transfer the property without paying commissions, and the entire fund is going to be transferred into the contract, into the user account once this transaction will take place. We are not keeping any cut or any fund into the contract. You can build that functionality as well, but that's a different concept. Okay, so let's follow along with me. So this is the entire buying functionality, doing all of this check and then make it transfer. So we are done with the three most important functions like list, update, update price, and buy. Now we have to write the normal function like getting all the properties into the contract, then get a individual property, then we have to get the property based on the user, a particular user. So these are the three functions. We're going to write it now. So this is the function we're going to create. Come here. Now we have to simply take a variable unt. We'll say items count, and initially it will be have the length. So we'll say property index. So this property index will keep the track that how many properties listed. Remember, hope you guys haven't forgot that. So we have this one, property index. This is where we have taken one. So we have the item count, the entire item we have in the marketplace. Now come here. We'll take another unt, and we'll call this one current index. It will be 0, because this index we are creating for this particular function, because when we will learn a loop, we have to increase that. So we can simply count that one, and we can calculate that how many items we have in that. Okay, just follow along with me. We'll take the property, we'll take the array memory, and we'll say item. We'll use the new keyword here, because we have to create a new array, and that array we're going to return out of this function. We'll take this property, and then we have to provide the length. Okay, so we're going to provide this item count. Okay, item count means entire property. So that's the property. Now we have to run the for loop. We'll say unt. Initially we'll start from 0 I. That's a normal for loop we have in Solidity as well, and JavaScript as well. We'll take this I is less than item count, and we have to simply increment that. So I plus plus. Then we'll come here. We're gonna take this another unity variable. Then we'll say current id. We have to say I plus one, not equal plus one. This will be one. Then we'll take this one. Come here. We'll take the property storage current item, and we have to simply get the properties, and in that we have to simply pass the current id. That's pretty easy. Once we're done with that, once we have the property in the current items, we're going to take these items, and in that we have to pass the current index. So this will return us the data. You can see this is the length we have. This looks pretty fine. Now provide this one, and equal to going to be the current item. That's a normal JavaScript. Hope you guys are not getting confused. That's a normal JavaScript we are writing. So we have the property. Now we have to simply call this current index plus, we have to increment that plus one. Once we are done with this entire loop, we have to simply return the entire items from this entire function, and we'll say items. So hope that's the entire function for getting all the properties. Okay, we are simply running off this, and this looks fine. And we are done with this all property functionality. Now we have to work on the get property. So this function will allow us to get an individual property, but in this property we're not going to get the reviews and the comments. Okay, I'll show you why I'm not getting it, because we have created other function for getting those review and comment section. So now we have this get property, and so now we're going to start working on the get property, and this will give us the details of the property, all the information about the individual property. So let's start working on it. So what we can do is, come here, we have to take a unt variable, the id of the property, and here we're going to simply return the entire data of the property. So it's going to be the unt 256. Then we have to return the address of the owner. Then we have to return the unt, the price, and we have to return the other data. Like this will be the first one is going to be string, which is the title. This will be the category. This will be the, let's say, address, and this one is the description. Okay, all the data we are displaying here, and this is how you return something. That's normal. You can see how loud this bike silencer is. Sometimes it's very irritating. I don't know why they have this kind of bike. It's good, no problem I have with them, but I also had a bullet and I used to ride like that, but right now I don't know why it's bothers a lot. So just forget about that. Let's come back here. So we are returning all of this data, and that's how you define the data types. Okay, so when you want to return something from the functionality, that's you have to define the name of that variable. Okay, the data type, or you can define the name as well. Both are fine, but we are going with a simple approach. So that looks pretty fine. Come here, and the last one is going to be the description. Okay, so altogether we have 7, I guess. So we have 1, let's 2 3 4 5 6 7. Okay, yeah, 7. How many data we have into this? So we have this one: product id, owner, price, product title, category, image, property address, description, and address of the reviewer, and the string. We are not returning these 2 data because we're going to fetch these 2 data from the review functionality. Okay, so that looks pretty fine to me. No more problem we have. Everything's looking good, and that looks good. I'm getting an error. I can see that we are getting a couple of error. Okay, there is a problem. It's unt, not unit. Okay, let me change this one. I think I have more like that, so let's find out more. So things looks good. Okay, here we have change this one, unt 256. That's one, and simply there is another one. Simply change this one, change this one as well, and we have one here. We have also 256. Simply do one thing. I think we have more. Simply copy this one and paste here. So open this function. Here we have also change this one. Still I'm getting error. Where it is? So where it's coming from? Let's come here. We have no error into this. Let's open this function. No. Let's check this by property. That's also look fine. Get all properties looks fine. And this is the get property. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's try to work on the function. We'll come back to the error first. Okay, let's bring this like this and let's work on the functionality. Let's work on it. So we'll take the property. We have to find that property, memory property, and we have to get the property from the properties array. We have to pass the ID. Okay, the same logic we are following. First thing, we have to identify a particular property which a user is looking, and on the base of that, once we get the property, we have to simply make the changes and do all the logic. Okay, so this is the normal piece of code you can write almost every single time. So once we have the property, we have to simply return all of the data. So we'll say property dot property ID, product ID, then we'll say property dot owner, property dot price, property dot property titles, property dot category, property dot image. Now we have property dot this will have the description, and I guess we have all of this, and that's it. So that's the entire functions, all the data we want out from this function. Okay, so that looks pretty good. That's a function we have written for getting the details about the property, but still I'm getting error message. Let's try to find out. So this looks good, no error we have here, so that looks pretty awesome to me. In this one is the update property, no error we have. This is the update pricing, by property, get all properties, and get properties. Okay, this one is looking fine. Now, okay, here we have to make the changes. It's a UNT 256. Still I'm getting an error. Let's see, we are getting errors somewhere else. So this one is fine. This one is fine. Now come here where it is. So this is the UNT mapping. This is the review, product, mapping. This is the events we have, listening. This one is good, update pricing. Okay, I found the problem. Here we have the issue. This is the red mark. Okay, I got it. So I hope you guys have marked this problem. You can see I forgot to add this double, and now it's looking fine. Now it's looking fine. And here we have the function. Let's close all of the function. Looking everything good. Okay, get properties, that's also looking fine. Let's close this one, and now we're going to start working on a get user property. So we have to pass the address of the user, and on the base of this I'm going to fetch all the property he listed. So first we have to take a variable called total item count. It will start from, let's say, property index, and we have to take another one. It will say property count, and we have to initialize from 0. Sorry, come down here, we have to take another one. We'll say UNT current index, and we have to get this to 0, and we have to run the loop so we can simply figure it out all. So the logic will work in this way. We'll try to loop over entire the property, the listed in the marketplace, and we try to match the address of the user. So with the user address which is providing, we try to match it out. So once we find a particular property is matching with that, we have to store into a array, and that's the data we're going to simply get out of it into this function. Okay, so just follow along with me. So we'll take this UNT, we'll say I equal to 0, then we have to say if it's less than the total item count, then we have to simply increment the loop. Okay, now in that we have to simply say if property, we have to pass the ID +1 if it's match the owner with the user. Okay, so if it matches with the property owner and the address of the user is providing, if it both matches, we want to store into a different data set. Then we want to simply take this item count and we have to increment to 1. Okay, means we have one property belonging to that particular user. Okay, then we have to come here, we have to take the property array memory, and we'll say items, and this is the item we're going to retrieve. Okay, it will be in array. We'll take this new property, and here we have to assign the count. So we'll have this item count Okay, that's the one we are incrementing in the first loop, and then we have to check for the for loop. So we'll say for, we'll say uint will take I. If it's less than the total count, I increment that, and inside that we will come here, we'll take this if statement. We'll say if properties I plus 1 is the owner, then we have to simply match with the user. So once it's matches, we have to store into a uint variable the ID. So we'll say current ID, and we'll say I plus 1. So we have to simply increment that one. So then we'll take the property storage, and we will say that current item, and it will be the properties, we'll say the property, come on, current item. Okay, we are simply finding that particular property belonging and storing into this particular current item array, and then we'll come here, we'll take this items, and that we're going to pass this current index, and we have to simply say current item, and we'll simply come here current item plus 1. We have to simply increment that one, and then we want to return this items. Okay, I'm getting this error message, it's items. So here we have taken items, and let's remove this one item, and here I have to take, it's good, it's not item, it's items, because this will keep one property or 10 properties. Okay, so it's better to type S. Okay, S. Now it looks fine. So this will give us the all properties related to the individual. That looks fine. Hope this entire thing makes sense to all of you guys. Now we're done with this get user properties, and that looks pretty awesome to me. We have all of this function we have written, and here we have something. This is the yellow underline we are getting. So open this one. Simply here we have, okay, my bad, because we want to return an ID at the end. Okay, because that's what we have defined. We want to return uint variable, a number. So we'll come here, that's a very good one. So you can return the entire statement, but I want to return an ID. So we'll say return, and I want to return the product ID. So we'll say product ID, and that looks good. So you can see no more error we have right now, everything's looking fine. So that looks pretty good. So this is the product ID, and that's what we are returning here. Close this one, and this one done, this one done, this one done, this one. Okay, now we have this get property, get user property, and that's the only thing I want to cover in this particular section of the smart contract. In the next section, we're going to work on the add review, because this function is going to be little huge, because we have to build a complex logic. Yes, there is a complexity a little bit, not that complex, in the get highest product review. Then we have to build the logic for the get user review and get product reviews. So there's a little bigger function we have. So that's what we'll cover in the next video. So let's move to that.